At my grandson's birthday party, my daughter-in-law handed me a printed bill for baby formula right in front of everyone. It wasn't folded. It wasn't subtle. She held it between two fingers like it was something official. Something expected. I looked down at it, then at her, and I smiled. I didn't say a word as I stepped into the backyard. There were balloons tied to the white fence, blue and gold, my grandson's favorite colors, or at least that's what I had been told. A long table stretched across the patio, covered in a plastic cloth that fluttered slightly in the afternoon breeze. Paper plates, store-bought cupcakes, a banner that read, "Happy First Birthday, Noah." I had arrived early, as I always did. I had brought a gift, wrapped carefully in soft blue paper, tied with a ribbon I had saved from Christmas. Inside was something simple, practical, the kind of thing a baby actually needs, not just something for pictures. I also brought something else, a check, folded neatly inside my purse, just in case. "I'm glad you're here," I said softly, more out of habit than expectation. If you're listening, follow my story until the end. And tell me where you're watching from. I always wonder how far stories like this travel. I used to believe birthdays were about family, about gathering, about watching the next generation take its first steps into the world while the older ones stood quietly in the background, proud just to be included. I had imagined this day differently. I thought I'd be helping cut the cake, holding my grandson while everyone laughed. Maybe someone would ask me how I was doing. Maybe my son would sit beside me for a moment, just like he used to when he was small. But things change. Not all at once. Not loudly. Just slowly. I placed my gift on the table with the others. There were many. Bright boxes. Expensive brands. Things I didn't recognize, but I knew they cost more than I would ever spend on myself. No one noticed mine. That was all right. I didn't expect them to. My daughter-in-law was standing near the drink station, laughing with a group of her friends. She looked polished. Perfect even. Not a hair out of place. When she saw me, her smile didn't fade, but it didn't grow either. "Oh, you made it," she said. Not "thank you for coming." Not "I'm glad you're here." Just "you made it." "I wouldn't miss it," I replied. And I meant that. My son was by the grill, talking, nodding, checking his phone between sentences. He saw me, gave a small wave, didn't come over. I told myself he was busy. I told myself a lot of things that day. I found a seat at the edge of the patio, not too close to the center, not too far either. A place where I wouldn't be in the way, a place where I could still see everything. That's when she walked over. My daughter-in-law, still smiling, still holding something in her hand. "I've been meaning to talk to you," she said, loud enough for the people nearby to hear. A few heads turned. Not all, but enough. She handed me the paper. That's when I saw it. A list. Itemized. Baby formula. Diapers. Wipes. Bottles. Numbers next to each one. And, at the bottom, a total. "We've been covering a lot lately," she continued, her tone light, almost casual. "I figured it's only fair everyone helps out. Everyone." She didn't say my name. She didn't have to. I looked at the paper again. It wasn't a question. It wasn't a request. It was a bill. Someone nearby let out a small laugh. Not loud. Not cruel. Just uncomfortable. Like they didn't know what else to do. I felt every eye that wasn't looking directly at me. You can always tell. People don't need to stare for you to know they're watching. I nodded once, folded the paper carefully, and slipped it into my purse. "I see," I said. Nothing more. She blinked just for a second. Maybe she expected resistance. Maybe she wanted a scene. I gave her neither. "I'll take care of it," I added. Simple, controlled, final. She smiled again. This time a little wider. "Great," she said, turning back to her friends. "I knew you'd understand." Understand. That word stayed with me. The party continued. Music played. Laughter rose and fell. Someone brought out a camera. My grandson was passed from arm to arm, his small hands reaching for whatever was closest. When it was my turn to hold him, it lasted less than a minute. "He's getting fussy," she said, gently taking him back. I nodded. Of course he was. I sat back down.
watched,
listened, and remembered. This wasn't the first time.
not really.
It had started small. A grocery bill here, a forgotten expense there, a casual comment about how things were tight and how family helps family. And I had helped. Every time, without question, because that's what mothers do. Even when their children grow up, even when they build families of their own, even when those families slowly stop including them. I reached into my purse again, not for the bill, for the check I had brought, still folded, still untouched. I ran my fingers over the edge of it. Then I put it back. Across the yard, my daughter-in-law laughed again.
Loud, bright,
Effortless. Like nothing had happened. Like what she did was normal, expected, and maybe in her world it was. I leaned back in my chair, closed my eyes for just a moment, and let the noise of the party fade into the background. Because in that moment, something became very clear. This wasn't about baby formula. It wasn't about money.
it was about respect.
And how easily it had been taken from me. Right there. In front of everyone. I opened my eyes. And this time when I looked at them, I wasn't seeing family. Not the way I used to. I said nothing. I did nothing. I just watched. And for the first time in a long time, I started to think. I stayed until the candles were lit. That's what people expect, isn't it? You don't leave early. Not at a child's birthday. Not when you're supposed to be family. So I stayed. They gathered around the cake. My grandson sat in his high chair, a small paper crown slipping to one side. Someone adjusted it. Someone else fixed the lighting for pictures. My daughter-in-law stood right behind him, one hand resting lightly on his shoulder, the other holding her phone. Okay, everyone closer, she called. Chairs scraped. Conversations paused. People leaned in. I stood up slowly. Not because anyone asked me to, just so I could see. Wait, she said suddenly. Everything froze for a second. She looked around, then past me. Oh, it's fine, she added quickly. We're good. No one asked who she was looking for, but I knew. They sang. Loud. Cheerful. Slightly off-key. I moved my lips, but no sound came out. When the candles were blown out, there was applause. Someone cheered. A few people clapped a little too long. And then came the photos.
Family first, she said.
Again, loud enough. Clear enough. People started arranging themselves. My son stepped in beside her. His arm went around her waist like it belonged there. Like it always had. Her parents moved closer. Then her sister. Then a friend who, apparently, counted as family too. I stood where I was. Waiting. No one called my name. I took a step forward anyway. Not into the center. Just closer. Close enough to be seen. She glanced at me. Just a glance. Then she turned back to the camera. Okay, ready? 1, 2. The flash went off. That's when I realized something. I wasn't forgotten. I was excluded. There's a difference. A quiet one. But once you feel it, you can't unfeel it. I stepped back. No one noticed. Or maybe they did. And chose not to. I returned to my seat at the edge of the patio. The same chair. The same view. Only now, everything looked a little clearer. They moved on quickly. Cake was served. Plates were passed around. Someone turned the music up again. Life as they saw it continued. A slice of cake appeared in front of me. I didn't see who brought it. Chocolate, a voice said. Hope that's okay. I nodded. It didn't matter what flavor it was. I picked up the fork. Took a small bite. It was sweet. Too sweet. Across the table, I heard my daughter-in-law again. I mean, formula alone is insane these days, she said, shaking her head. You'd think grandparents would want to help more, you know? A few people nodded. One of them glanced at me, then quickly looked away. I placed the fork down, carefully, quietly. Some people just don't realize how expensive things are now, she continued. It's not like it used to be. Not like it used to be. I almost smiled at that. Because she was right. It wasn't like it used to be. Back then, I didn't keep track. I didn't itemize. I didn't turn care into numbers on a page. I remembered the nights I stayed up with my son when he was sick. The extra shifts I took, so he could have what he needed. The way I never once thought to hand him a bill. I picked up my purse, opened it slightly, looked at the folded paper inside. Her paper, not mine. Then I looked at the check again. Still there, still untouched. For a moment, I considered it, just handing it over, ending the tension before it could grow. That's what I had always done. Smooth things over, make it easier for them. But something stopped me. Not anger, not pride. Something quieter, stronger. Clarity. I closed my purse, left both papers inside. The party went on. Children ran across the yard. Someone opened another gift. Wrapping paper tore. Laughter followed. I watched it all, from the same seat, with the same expression. But inside, something had shifted. Not broken. Not yet. Just moved. I started to notice things I hadn't allowed myself to see before. The way my son avoided long conversations with me. The way decisions were made without ever asking for my input. The way I was included only when it was convenient or useful. I looked at the table again, at the gifts, at the decorations, at everything that made this day look whole. And I realized I had been filling in the gaps for a long time, quietly, consistently, without being asked, until today. Today they asked, just not in the way anyone should. I stood up again, not to leave, not yet, just to stretch my legs, to walk a little, to think. As I passed by the drink table, I heard my name, soft, careful. It was one of the guests, a woman I didn't know well. You okay? She asked. I looked at her, smiled the same smile. I'm fine, I said. And I was. That was the moment I understood something important. I wasn't hurt because of the money. I was hurt because they thought I would accept it, like I always had. I walked back to my seat, sat down, folded my hands in my lap, and for the first time that day, I stopped reacting. I just observed, listened, remembered, because if there's one thing time teaches you, it's that silence, when used correctly, isn't weakness, it's preparation. I stayed until the gifts were opened, one by one. That's how long these things take, if you're paying attention. They gathered around again, this time on the grass. Someone laid out a blanket, bright colors, cartoon animals. It looked cheerful, thoughtfully chosen. My grandson sat in the middle, surrounded by boxes he didn't understand. Everyone else did. Okay, let's see what we got, my daughter-in-law said, clapping her hands lightly. Excited. In control. She picked up the first gift. Not mine. Of course not. Paper tore. Laughter followed. A small toy held up for everyone to see. Oh my God, that's adorable. So cute. Where did you get that? Each gift came with a reaction. Each reaction came with attention. I watched, listened, not to the words, but to the tone. Excitement for some, politeness for others. A quick glance, a forced smile. You can tell which gifts matter. Mine stayed on the table, still wrapped, still untouched. I didn't move. After a few more boxes, my son finally reached for it. Oh, this one's from Mom, he said. Not my mom. Just Mom. He handed it to her. She took it, looked at the tag, paused for half a second. Let's open it, she said. Same tone, same smile. The paper came off slower this time. Not careful, just slower. Inside was a set of baby essentials. Simple things. The kind you don't post online. The kind you actually use. Oh, she said. A small sound. Hard to read. It's practical, she added. No one clapped. No one leaned in. No one asked where I got it. She placed it beside her. Not with the others. Just beside. We already have a lot of this, she continued, lightly. But thank you. Thank you. I nodded. Across the yard, someone called her name. She turned immediately, moved on. Just like that. The moment passed. But it stayed with me, because it wasn't about the gift. It never is. It's about what people choose to value. And what they don't. I looked at the pile again. Bright colors. Big boxes. Things meant to impress. Then I looked at mine, already fading into the background. And I thought about the paper in my purse. The one she gave me. Itemized. Measured. Valued. Funny how some things get numbers. And others don't. The sun had started to dip slightly. Not much. Just enough to soften the light. People began to relax. Shoes came off. Voices lowered. The kind of shift that happens when an event starts winding down. That's when I heard it. Not loud. Not meant for everyone. "She'll pay it," my daughter-in-law said. I didn't turn. I didn't need to.
She
Always does. A pause. Then a quiet laugh. "Honestly, it's easier this way.
no worth conversations.
Just hand it to her, and she handles it." Someone murmured something in response. I couldn't hear the words, but I understood the tone. Agreement. I sat very still. There it was.
Clear. Simple.
Not a misunderstanding. Not a bad moment. A pattern. I reached into my purse again. Slowly.
Carefully.
This time, I took the paper out, unfolded it, smoothed it across my lap. Baby formula. Diapers.
Wipes.
Each item listed. Each cost calculated. I read it once. Then again. Not because I needed to. Because I wanted to remember it. Exactly as it was. Then I folded it again. Neatly.
Precisely.
And placed it back inside.
Next to the check.
For years, I had been giving without keeping track. Without asking questions. Without expecting anything in return. And in return, I had become predictable. Reliable. Manageable. I closed my purse. Rested my hands on top of it. Across the yard, my son laughed at something someone said. He looked relaxed. Comfortable. He hadn't heard what she said. Or maybe he had. And chose not to respond. I watched him for a moment. Just a moment. Then I looked away. Because something else had just become clear. This wasn't just about her. It was about what he allowed. The music shifted. Something slower.
Softer.
People began gathering their things. Checking their phones. Talking about leaving. The end of the party. I stood up. Smoothed my dress. Picked up my purse. No one stopped me. No one asked where I was going. I took a few steps toward the gate. Then paused. I turned back. Just once. Looked at the table. The decorations. The people. My family. And for the first time, I saw them without the stories I had been telling myself.
No excuses. No justifications.
Just what was there. I didn't feel angry. Not yet. I felt something else. Something quieter. Final. I walked to my car. Opened the door.
Sat down.
The party continued behind me. Faint now. Distant. I placed my purse on the passenger seat. Looked at it for a moment. Then I reached inside. Took out the check. Held it in my hand. Unfolded. Ready. I stared at it. And then very slowly, I folded it back. Because this time, I wasn't going to make it easy.
I
Didn't drive away right away.
I just sat there.
Hands resting on the steering wheel. Engine still off. The sound of the party behind me fading into something distant. Something that no longer felt like it belonged to me. For a long time I had been part of the background. The one who showed up early. Stayed late. Filled in the gaps no one else noticed. Quietly.
Consistently.
And today they made it official. I glanced at my purse again. Still sitting on the passenger seat. Still holding two things.
A bill.
And a check. One they gave me. One I brought for them. I reached over. Opened it again. Took out the bill first. Unfolded it carefully. The paper was smooth.
New.
Printed with intention. Not something written in a hurry. Not something decided in the moment. This had been planned. I looked at the numbers again. Not because I needed to understand them, but because I wanted to see how far it had gone. Line after line. Cost after cost. Everything accounted for. Everything expected. I turned the paper over. Blank on the back. Nothing hidden. Because they didn't think it needed to be. I placed it back on my lap. Then reached for the check. Still blank. Still mine to decide. For years, I never hesitated. If they needed something, I gave it. If they asked, I didn't question. If they didn't ask, I offered anyway. Because I thought that was love. But love doesn't keep score. And it certainly doesn't send invoices. I let out a slow breath. Not heavy. Not emotional. Just steady. Then I started the car. The drive home was quiet. No music. No phone calls. Just the road ahead and a lot of thoughts I had been putting off for a long time. I passed the grocery store where I used to shop for my son when he was little. Back when everything felt simple. Back when I didn't need permission to belong. I kept driving. By the time I reached my house, the sun had lowered enough to cast long shadows across the driveway. The same house. The same front door. Everything exactly where it had always been. I stepped inside, closed the door behind me, and for the first time that day it was completely quiet.
No voices. No laughter. No expectations.
I placed my purse on the kitchen counter, took off my shoes, set them neatly by the door. Routine.
Familiar.
Controlled. I walked into the living room,
Sat down.
looked around. Photos lined the shelves. My son as a child. School pictures. Birthday candles. Small moments frozen in time. I picked one up. He couldn't have been more than 6. Holding a toy truck. Smiling like the world was simple. I traced the edge of the frame with my finger, then set it back down. Because that version of him wasn't the one I saw today. I went back to the kitchen. Opened my purse again. This time, I took everything out. Placed it on the counter. Neatly.
The bill.
The check. My keys. My phone. I stared at them for a moment. Then I did something I hadn't done in years. I picked up my phone and scrolled through my contacts. Names I hadn't called in a long time.
People I had slowly stopped reaching out to.
Because I was busy. Because I had family. Because I thought I didn't need anything else. I stopped on one name. Daniel Harper. I didn't smile. I didn't hesitate. I just pressed call. It rang twice. Hello. His voice hadn't changed. Still calm. Still steady.
Daniel, I said.
It's me. A pause. Then recognition. Well, it's been a while. It has, I replied. Another pause. Not uncomfortable. Just measured. What can I do for you? He asked. I looked at the bill on the counter.
Then, at the check.
I need to review something, I said. Everything, actually. He didn't ask what I meant.
He didn't need to.
When are you available? He asked. Tomorrow, I said. Come by the office at 10. I will. The call ended. I placed the phone down. Nothing dramatic had happened.
No confrontation.
No raised voices. Just a conversation. But something had already changed. I looked at the check one last time. Then folded it. Put it back into my purse. Not to give.
To keep.
The bills stayed on the counter. Not as a reminder of what they asked, but as proof of what they assumed. I turned off the kitchen light, walked down the hallway, and stopped at the doorway of the guest room. It used to be my son's room. Before he moved out. Before everything became separate. I stood there for a moment, then turned away. Because some doors don't need to be opened again. I went to my bedroom, sat on the edge of the bed, and for the first time in a long time, I wasn't thinking about what they needed. I was thinking about what I had allowed, and what I was about to change. The next morning, I woke up before the sun. Not because I had to, because I couldn't stay still anymore. The house was quiet. It always is at that hour.
No noise. No interruptions.
No expectations waiting for me in another room. I made coffee. Same mug. Same routine. I didn't rush. Some people think decisions happen in big moments. Loud ones. But they don't. They happen in silence. I sat at the kitchen table. The bill was still there. Exactly where I left it. Flat. Unmoved. Unapologetic. I didn't touch it right away. I just looked at it. Then I reached over. Picked it up. Read it again. Not for the numbers. For the meaning. Because yesterday it felt like an insult. Today it felt like clarity. I folded it once. Then placed it neatly beside my cup.
No anger. No ruse.
Just order. By the time I finished my coffee, the sun had started to rise. Soft light through the window. The kind that makes everything look calm. I got dressed. Simple.
Clean.
Nothing special. I picked up my purse.
Checked inside.
The check was still there. Untouched. Good. At exactly 9:40, I got in my car. Not early. Not late. Just on time. The drive to Daniel's office was familiar. I had been there before. Years ago. Back when things were different. Back when I didn't feel the need to protect anything. I parked. Sat for a moment. Then stepped out. His office hadn't changed much. Same glass door. Same quiet lobby. Professional. Controlled. I walked in. The receptionist looked up. Good morning.
Good morning, I replied.
My name is, she nodded before I finished. He's expecting you.
Of course he was.
I took a seat. Didn't wait long. Come in, his voice called. I stepped into his office. He stood up. Extended his hand. Good to see you, he said. You too, I replied. We sat down. No small talk. No unnecessary questions. He waited. I opened my purse. Took out the bill. Placed it on his desk.
He looked at it. Didn't touch it.
Just read.
A.
Few seconds passed. Then he looked up. Is this why you called? No, I said. This is why I stopped waiting. He nodded once.
Slow.
Understanding. What do you want to do? He asked. I didn't answer immediately. Not because I didn't know. Because I wanted to say it clearly. I want to review everything, I said. My accounts. My assets. My will.
No hesitation. No emotion.
I want to know exactly what belongs to me, and who has access to it. He leaned back slightly. Folded his hands. That's a good place to start, he said. Of course it was. He turned his computer toward me. Open files. Documents I hadn't looked at in years. Numbers. Names. Decisions I had made, without thinking twice. Back then, it felt natural. Now, it felt careless. We can make changes, he said. Anytime. I nodded. Then we will. He began explaining, step by step, what could be adjusted, what needed signatures, what would take time. I listened.
Carefully.
Not overwhelmed. Not confused. Just aware. For the first time in a long time, I wasn't reacting to something. I was choosing. We went through everything. Accounts that had shared access. Permissions I had granted without limits. Decisions made out of trust. Trust that had never been questioned. Until yesterday. At one point he paused. Looked at me directly. Do you want to inform them? He asked. I shook my head. No, I said.
No explanation.
No warning. Just no. He didn't push. He didn't need to. Understood, he said. By the time we finished, the sun was higher. The room brighter. Everything clearer. He printed a few documents. Slid them across the desk. Take your time, he said. I didn't. I picked up the pen.
And signed.
One after another. Each signature felt quiet. But final. Not revenge. Not anger. Just correction. When I stood up to leave, he walked me to the door. If you need anything else, he said, you know where to find me.
He replied.
And I meant that. I stepped outside. The air felt different. Lighter. Not because anything had changed yet, but because I had. I got into my car. Placed my purse on the seat beside me. For a moment, I thought about the party.
The bill.
The way she handed it to me. Then I started the engine. Because that moment was already behind me. What mattered now was what came next. I didn't go home right away.
Not this time.
Instead, I drove without a destination. Just a quiet road. A few turns. Familiar streets I hadn't paid attention to in years. It's strange how your mind works when something shifts. You start seeing things differently. Not new things. Just clearly. I passed the bank where I used to deposit money for my son when he first moved out. Back when he said, just until I get on my feet. I remembered that. I remembered a lot of things. Small transfers. Quick help. Don't worry, Mom, I'll pay you back. I never kept track. I stopped at a red light. Hands resting lightly on the wheel. Eyes forward. That was the pattern. Not yesterday. Not the party. Years. The bill wasn't the beginning. It was just the first time it was visible. The light turned green. I kept driving. Eventually, I found myself in a parking lot.
Quiet.
Almost empty. I turned off the engine. Sat there for a moment. Then I reached for my phone. There were 3 missed messages. All from my son. I didn't open them right away. I just looked at his name. Then I tapped. Hey Mom, you left early. Everything okay? A few minutes later. Did you see the paper? Just making sure you got it. And the last one. Let me know when you can send it. We've got bills coming up. I read them once. Then again. No, are you okay after that? No follow-up.
No pause.
Just expectation. I locked the phone. Placed it face down on my lap. There it was again.
Clear. Consistent.
Not concern. Transaction. I leaned back in my seat. Closed my eyes for a moment. Not to escape. Just to think without distraction. Then I opened them. Picked up the phone again. And this time, I replied. I received it. That was all.
No explanation. No timeline. No promise.
Just acknowledgement. A few seconds passed. Then the screen lit up again. Okay, great. Just send it when you can. Of course. I didn't respond. I placed the phone back down. For years, I had answered everything. Immediately. Completely. Not this time. I started the car again. Drove home. The house felt the same. Quiet. Still. But I didn't go to the kitchen. Not right away. Instead, I walked to the hallway closet. Opened it. Inside were old boxes. Papers. Folders I hadn't touched in years. I pulled one out. Then another. Set them on the table. Opened them slowly. Receipts. Old bank statements. Documents from years ago. Things I had never needed to revisit. Because I trusted. I sat down. Started going through them.
Not fast.
Not aggressively.
Carefully. Dates. Amounts.
Transfers. At first, it looked scattered. Random. Then patterns started to appear. Regular help. Irregular returns. Promises that were never followed up. I didn't feel angry. I felt organized. Like pieces of something were finally falling into place. I reached for a pen. Started making notes. Nothing dramatic. Just facts. Because facts don't argue. Time passed. I didn't check the clock. At some point, the light in the room shifted. Afternoon. My phone buzzed again. I glanced at it. Another message. Mom.
Short. Simple.
I let it sit. Because for the first time, I wasn't reacting to their timing. I was following my own. I went back to the papers. There was more than I remembered. Not just money. Access. Permissions. Things I had signed. Without reading twice. Because I trusted. I leaned back in my chair. Looked at everything spread out in front of me. And I understood something very clearly. Yesterday, she handed me a bill. But long before that, I had been paying. In ways I never counted. And now, I finally was. I gathered the papers. Stacked them neatly. Not to hide them. To keep them ready. Because this wasn't over. Not even close. I picked up my phone again. Opened my son's messages. Typed a response.
Paused.
Deleted it. Then I typed again. I'll talk to you soon. I sent it. And this time, I meant something very different. That afternoon, I didn't leave the table. Not really. I moved things around. Stacked papers. Sorted them into small, quiet piles. But I stayed in the same place. Because once you start seeing patterns, you don't stop halfway. The numbers were no longer random. They told a story. A few hundred here. A quick transfer there. A larger amount. Just this once. I remembered each moment. Not the numbers. The reasons. Mom, we're short this month. Mom, it's just temporary. Mom, we didn't expect this expense. And every time, I said yes. Not because they insisted. Because I didn't question it. I picked up one statement. Dated 3 years ago. A transfer I didn't even remember making. I stared at it for a moment, then wrote it down. Date, amount, purpose. Even if the purpose was just assumed. My phone buzzed again. This time, I didn't even look at it. Because I already knew what it would say. Another message. Another follow-up. Another quiet push. Instead, I kept writing. Line by line. Piece by piece. until the table in front of me looked different. Not like a mess. Like evidence. I leaned back, looked at it all, and for the first time, I didn't feel confused. I felt certain. There's a difference between helping and being relied on without limit. And somewhere along the way, that line had disappeared. Not because they erased it, because I let it fade. I stood up slowly, walked to the kitchen sink, poured out the rest of my cold coffee, rinsed the cup, set it aside. Simple movements.
Familiar.
But my mind wasn't where it usually was. It was ahead, thinking about what came next. Because clarity doesn't just show you the past. It forces you to decide the future. I walked back to the table, looked at my phone. 5 new messages. All from my son. I unlocked it. Mom, are you there? We really need to figure this out today. It's kind of urgent. Can you just send it and we'll talk later? And the last one. I don't understand why this is a big deal. I read that one twice. Not because it was surprising, because it was honest. To him, this wasn't a big deal. And that told me everything I needed to know. I locked the phone again. Set it down.
No anger.
No reaction. Just confirmation. I gathered the papers on the table, tapped them into a neat stack. Then I walked to the drawer, pulled out a folder. Plain. Nothing special. I placed everything inside.
Closed it.
Not to hide it.
To keep it ready.
Because I wasn't going to explain myself over text. Some things need to be said face to face. And some things don't need to be explained at all. I picked up my purse. Checked inside one more time. The check was still there. Untouched. Exactly where it needed to be. I walked to the window. Looked outside. The street was quiet. A few cars passing. Nothing unusual. Everything looked normal. And that's the thing about moments like this. From the outside, nothing changes. But inside, everything does. I turned away from the window. Reached for my phone again. Scrolled to my son's name. Pressed call. It rang longer this time. Then, hey mom. His voice was quick. Expectant.
Hi, I said. A pause.
So, did you see my messages? He asked. I did. Another pause.
Short.
Okay, good, he said. So, when do you think you can? I'm not sending it. I didn't raise my voice. Didn't rush the words. I just said them. Silence. Not the comfortable kind. The kind that comes when something unexpected lands. What? He said. I'm not sending it. I repeated. Another pause. Longer this time. Mom, it's just for the formula, he said. It's not. I know what it's for.
My voice stayed the same. Calm.
Even. That's not the point. I could hear him shifting. Thinking. Trying to adjust. Then what is the point? He asked. A fair question. I looked at the folder on the table. At everything inside it. The point, I said slowly, is that this isn't the first time. Silence again. And this time he didn't interrupt. Because somewhere in that silence he already knew. I think it's time we talk, I continued. Properly. About what? He asked. About everything, I said. Not emotional. Not dramatic. Just clear. Another pause. Then finally. Okay, he said.
But his voice had changed.
Less certain. Okay, he repeated. And just like that, the conversation had shifted. Not loud. Not explosive. But irreversible. We agreed to meet the next day. Not at my house. Not at his. Neutral ground. He suggested a cafe. The same one they always chose.
Bright. Busy. Comfortable for them.
I chose somewhere else. A quiet place. Small tables. No music.
No distractions.
He didn't argue. That was the first sign something had shifted. I arrived early. Of course I did. Sat near the window. Ordered tea. I didn't check my phone. Didn't look around. I just sat. Because this time, I wasn't there to fill silence. I was there to let it speak. He walked in 10 minutes later. Alone. I noticed that immediately. No wife.
No buffet.
Just him. He looked around. Saw me. Walked over.
Hi, he said. Eat.
He sat down. Not across. Slightly angled. Like he wasn't sure where to place himself. The waiter came. He ordered coffee.
Quickly.
Then silence. Not awkward. Just unfamiliar. Because, for once, I wasn't starting the conversation. He cleared his throat. So, what did you mean yesterday? He asked.
I didn't answer right away.
Instead, I reached into my bag, took out the folder, placed it gently on the table.
He looked at it, then at me.
What's that? He asked. Something I should have looked at a long time ago, I said. I opened it, turned it toward him. Papers. Neatly stacked. Organized. His eyes moved across the pages. At first, confusion. Then recognition. Mom, what is this? He asked again. Take a look.
He did.
Not quickly. Slower than I expected. Because once you start reading something like that, you realize it matters. Transfers.
Dates. Amounts.
Patterns. I watched his face. Not for guilt. For understanding. At one point he stopped. Looked up. I didn't realize, he started. I didn't interrupt. He looked back down.
Kept reading.
The silence stretched.
People around us talked.
Cups clinked. Life continued. But at our table, everything narrowed. Finally, he leaned back. Exhaled. This isn't what you think, he said. I almost smiled. Not because it was funny. Because it was expected. Then tell me what it is, I said.
Calm.
Steady. He hesitated. It's just you've always helped, he said. There it was. Not denial. Assumption. I agreed. He nodded quickly. Like that confirmed something. So this isn't new, he added. No, I said. And then, after a pause. But that doesn't make it right. That landed. I could see it. Not as anger. As resistance. Mom, we're not taking advantage of you, he said. I didn't respond immediately. Instead, I reached into my purse again. Took out the bill. The one she handed me. I placed it on top of the folder. Right in front of him.
He looked at it. Didn't touch it. Didn't need to.
You saw this? He asked. I did. Silence. This was just, he started. Planned. I finished.
He stopped.
Because there wasn't another word for it. I didn't raise my voice. Didn't lean forward. I just let the paper sit there. Between us. Clear. This is different, he said finally. Is it? I asked. Not sharp. Just honest. He didn't answer right away. Because now he was starting to see it. Not as separate moments.
As
a pattern. You've always helped, he repeated, quieter this time. Yes, I said. And I did that willingly. I let that sit for a second, without being asked this way. His eyes moved back to the bill, then to the folder, then back to me. What are you saying? He asked. I folded my hands on the table. I'm saying something has changed, I said. Not dramatic. Just clear. Yesterday wasn't just about money. He stayed silent. It was about expectation. I continued. Still calm. Still steady. And I'm no longer going to be part of that. The words didn't echo. They didn't need to. They settled. Right where they needed to. He looked at me. Really looked. For the first time in a long time. Then what happens now? He asked. A simple question. But this time it wasn't casual. It mattered. I closed the folder. Slowly. That depends, I said. On him. On them. On what they chose to do next. And for the first time he understood that. He didn't answer right away. Not after I said that. That depends. Those two words stayed between us. Not heavy. Just unfamiliar. Because for once, I wasn't the one adjusting. He looked down at the table. At the folder. At the bill. Then back at me. What do you want me to do? He asked. That question would have meant something different before. Before, it would have been simple. Clear. Just tell me, Mom. I'll fix it. But now, it sounded different. Not like responsibility. Like confusion. I didn't rush to answer. Because this wasn't about giving him instructions. It was about changing the pattern. I'm not going to tell you what to do, I said. He frowned slightly. Then how am I supposed to fix it? He asked. There it was again.
Fix.
Like this was a problem to solve quickly. Something to smooth over. It's not something you fix in one moment, I said.
Calm.
Measured. It's something you understand. Silence. He leaned back in his chair. ran a hand through his hair. I didn't think it was like that, he admitted. I nodded once. I know.
And I did.
Because if he had understood, this conversation wouldn't be happening. I just thought you didn't mind, he continued. That one landed differently. Not defensive. Not dismissive.
Just honest.
I didn't, I said. Another pause. Until now. He looked at me again.
More carefully this time.
What changed? He asked. I didn't point to the folder.
Didn't point to the bill.
I didn't need to. The way it was done, I said. Simple.
Clear.
In front of everyone. That part mattered. Not because it embarrassed me. Because it revealed something. Something they didn't think needed to be hidden. He looked down again. I didn't know she was going to do that, he said. I believed him. That wasn't the issue. But you didn't stop it either, I replied.
No accusation.
No edge. Just truth.
He didn't argue.
Because there was nothing to argue. The waiter came by, refilled his coffee, asked if we needed anything else. We both said no. And the conversation continued. Quieter now. More careful. I can talk to her, he said after a moment.
I shook my head slightly.
This isn't just about her. He exhaled. I figured you'd say that, he murmured. Of course he did. Because somewhere along the way he had started to understand. This is about how things have been. I continued. Not emotional. Not dramatic. Just steady. And how they're going to be from now on. He nodded slowly. Not agreeing. Not disagreeing. Just processing. So, what does that mean? He asked. A fair question. I folded my hands again. Looked at him directly. It means I'm not going to keep doing things the same way, I said.
Clear.
No more assumptions. He nodded. No more unspoken expectations. Another nod. And no more situations where I'm put in a position like that. This time, he didn't nod right away. Because that one carried weight. Okay, he said finally. Quiet. I understand that. I held his gaze for a moment, then added. And the money stops. That landed. Not loudly, but completely. His posture shifted. Just slightly. What do you mean? He asked. I mean, I'm not going to keep covering things like this, I said.
Still calm.
Still even. If you need help, we can talk about it. I let that settle. But it won't be expected. Silence. Longer this time. Because this wasn't a small adjustment. This was a change. A real one. I didn't realize it felt like that, he said quietly. I know, I replied. And now you do. We sat there for a moment. No one rushing to fill the space. Because there was nothing left
to soften.
The truth had already been said. He glanced at the folder again. Can I keep this? He asked. I shook my head. No, not harsh. Just firm. I need it. He nodded. Of course he did. Because for the first time, he understood that this wasn't something I was going to hand over. Not information. Not control. Not anymore. He picked up his cup. Took a sip. Set it back down. Okay, he said again. But this time it sounded different. Less like agreement. More like acceptance. We didn't stay much longer. There was nothing left to explain. No argument to win. No scene to make. Just a line that had finally been drawn. We stood up. Walked toward the door. Outside, the air felt cooler. He paused beside his car. Mom, he said. I turned. I didn't mean to make you feel like that. I looked at him for a moment. I know, I said. And I did. But intention doesn't change impact. He nodded. I'll figure things out, he added. I didn't respond to that. Because that part was his to handle. Not mine. I got into my car. Closed the door. And, as I started the engine, I realized something. For the first time in years. I wasn't leaving a conversation feeling responsible for what came next. I was just leaving. And that made all the difference. The drive home felt different this time. Not quieter. Not louder. Just lighter. I didn't replay the conversation. Didn't go over what I said.
Or what he said.
Because there was nothing unclear about it. For once, everything had been said exactly the way it needed to be. I stopped at a red light. Looked ahead. Hands steady on the wheel. And I noticed something small. I wasn't bracing myself. Not for a message. Not for a call. Not for the next request. That was new. When I got home, I didn't go straight inside. I sat in the car for a moment. Engine off. Silence settling around me. Then I picked up my purse. Opened it. The check was still there. Untouched. I held it in my hand. Looked at it for a second. Then I folded it again. Carefully. And placed it back inside. Not because I was unsure. Because I was certain. Inside, the house felt the same. But I didn't go to the table. Didn't look at the papers. I already knew what they said. Instead, I walked into the living room.
Sat down.
For the first time in a long time, I allowed myself to just sit. No thinking ahead. No planning.
No fixing.
Just stillness. My phone buzzed. I glanced at it. A message. From him. I didn't rush to open it.
Iba ka moment.
Then I did. We talked.
Short.
That was all. I read it once. Then locked the phone. Because that was enough. Not details. Not explanations. Just confirmation. Something had already started to shift. I leaned back in my chair. Closed my eyes for a second. Not tired. Just aware. Because change doesn't happen all at once. It starts quietly. Like this. Later that evening, the phone rang. I knew who it was before I looked. Her. I let it ring twice. 3 times. Then I answered. Hello. A pause. Then her voice. Careful. I wanted to talk to you.
Of course she did.
I'm listening, I said. No edge.
No emotion.
Just space. Another pause. I didn't realize how that looked, she said. I didn't interrupt. I mean the bill at the party, she added. There it was. Finally said out loud. I thought it would be easier, she continued. Easier. I had heard that word before. I didn't mean to embarrass you, she said. I believed her. But belief doesn't change what happened. It wasn't about embarrassment, I replied. My voice stayed even. It was about respect. Silence. Longer this time. Because that word doesn't leave much room to move. I do respect you, she said quickly. I didn't respond right away. Because respect isn't something you explain. It's something you show. I understand what you're saying, she added. Another pause. And it won't happen again. That part mattered. Not because it fixed anything. Because it acknowledged something. I let the silence sit for a moment. Then I said, good. Simple.
Clear. No lecture. No repetition.
Just acknowledgement. She exhaled slightly. I think we just got used to how things were, she said. There it was again. Not cruelty. Comfort. And comfort can blur lines. Yes, I said. And now things are different. Another pause. Okay, she said quietly. Not arguing. Not pushing. Just accepting. We didn't talk much longer. There was no need. Because the point had already been made. After the call ended, I placed the phone down. The house was quiet again. But it didn't feel empty. It felt settled. I stood up. Walked to the kitchen. The folder was still there. Right where I left it. I placed my hand on top of it. Not to open it. Just to feel it. Because it represented something now. Not the past. A boundary. I turned off the lights. Walked down the hallway. Everything looked the same. But it wasn't. Because tomorrow and the days after that would not follow the same pattern. Not anymore. And for the first time in a long time, that didn't feel uncertain. It felt right. The next few days were quiet. Not the kind of quiet that feels empty. The kind that feels intentional. No sudden messages. No follow-ups about money. No just checking in that really meant something else. Just space. And in that space, you start to notice what's missing. Not just the requests. The habit of waiting for them. I woke up each morning without that familiar thought in the back of my mind. What will they need today? That question was gone. Replaced by something simpler. What do I want to do today? It took a moment to get used to that. Because when you've spent years responding to others, choosing for yourself feels unfamiliar. But not uncomfortable. Just new. I kept my routine. Coffee in the morning. A walk in the afternoon. Dinner at the same time. Nothing dramatic changed on the outside. But inside, everything had shifted. On the third day, my phone rang again. My son. I answered.
Y.
Hey, Mom. His voice was different. Not rushed. Not expectant. Just steady. How are you? He asked. A simple question. But this time it sounded real. I'm fine, I said. A pause. Good, he replied. No follow-up. No hidden meaning. Just acknowledgement. We stayed on the line for a moment. Not speaking. But not uncomfortable either. Then he cleared his throat. I've been looking at things, he said. I didn't interrupt. Our expenses, how we've been handling stuff, he continued. I nodded slightly, even though he couldn't see it. And you were right, he added. That word again. Not defensive this time. Accepting. We got used to relying on you, he said. Simple.
Direct. No excuses.
I appreciate you saying that, I replied. Because I did. Not for the apology. For the awareness. We're going to make some changes, he continued. I didn't ask what kind. That part was his responsibility now. I'm glad to hear that, I said. And I meant it. Another pause. Then, and about the other day, he added. I waited. I should have said something, he said. There it was. Not about the money. About the moment. About standing there and doing nothing. I know, I replied.
No accusation.
Just truth. I didn't realize how it looked, he said. I understand, I said. Because I did. People don't always see clearly until something forces them to. And I won't let that happen again, he added. That part mattered. Not as a promise. As a decision. Good, I said. We didn't stretch the conversation. Didn't go back over everything. Because we didn't need to. The important parts had already been said. After we hung up, I placed my phone on the table.
Sat down.
Looked around the room. Everything was the same. But I wasn't. I stood up. Walked to the kitchen.
The time.
Just family. Dinner at their house. I stood in my kitchen, looking at the message on my phone. We'd love for you to come over Sunday. Just us. No mention of anything else.
No requests. No attachments.
Just an invitation. I didn't answer right away. Not because I didn't know what to say. Because I wanted to feel the difference. A week ago, I would have said yes immediately. Without thinking. Without pausing. Now, I took a moment. Not to hesitate. To choose. Then I typed, I'll come by at 5.
Simple. Clear.
Sunday came quietly. I got ready the same way I always did. Nothing special. Nothing different. But as I stood at the door, keys in hand, I noticed something. I wasn't carrying anything. No extra groceries.
No envelope.
No check. Just my purse. That alone said more than anything I could have explained. When I arrived, the house looked the same. Lights on. Voices inside. I knocked. The door opened quickly. My son stood there. Hey, Mom, he said.
Y.
He stepped aside. Let me in. And this time, he didn't walk away. He stayed for a second. Thanks for coming, he added. I nodded. Of course. Inside, everything was set. Dinner on the table. Plates ready. My daughter-in-law came out of the kitchen.
She paused when she saw me.
Not awkward. Just aware.
Hi, she said. Y.
A small moment. But different. Because this time, nothing was being performed. No audience. No pressure. Just honesty. We sat down. And something very simple happened. She placed a plate in front of me.
No hesitation.
No comment. Just inclusion. We started eating. Conversation came slowly.
Not forced.
Not overly cheerful. Just normal. For the first time in a long time. At one point, my grandson made a small noise. Everyone looked over. Smiled. And I realized this was what it should have felt like all along. Not transactional. Not measured. Just shared. Halfway through dinner, my son spoke. We've been going over our budget, he said. I looked at him. Not surprised. Just listening. We're restructuring things, he continued. I nodded slightly. We should have done it a long time ago. There was no defensiveness in his voice.
No expectation.
Just responsibility. That sounds like a good step, I said. And I meant it. My daughter-in-law glanced at me, then said quietly, We won't be asking you for things like that again.
Clear. Direct. No hesitation.
I held her gaze for a moment, then nodded. Good.
No lecture. No reminder.
Because we both knew. That moment at the party had already said enough.
Dinner continued.
Plates were cleared.
Dishes moved.
At one point, I stood to help, out of habit, then paused. Not because I wasn't allowed, because I realized something. Helping is a choice, not an obligation. I picked up a few plates anyway, but this time it felt different. Not expected.
Given.
After dinner, we sat in the living room. My grandson played on the floor. Small sounds. Quiet laughter. Nothing dramatic. Just life. And as I watched him, I thought about everything that had changed. Not in the house. In the space between us. The assumptions were gone. The quiet expectations had been replaced with something else. Awareness. Respect. Not perfect, but real. When it was time to leave, I stood up, picked up my purse. My son walked me to the door. Same as before, but not the same. Drive safe, he said. I will. A pause. Then, Mom, I looked at him. Thanks for saying something. I held his gaze, then said, I should have said it sooner. Because that was the truth.
Not just about them. About me.
He nodded. We didn't say anything else. We didn't need to. I stepped outside. The air was cool, quiet. I got into my car, started the engine, and as I drove away, I thought about that moment, the party, the bill in my hand, the way I said nothing, and for a long time, I thought that silence was weakness. But it wasn't. It was the moment everything became clear. Because sometimes you don't respond right away. Not because you don't have something to say, but because you're deciding what deserves a response at all. I stopped at a red light, looked ahead, and this time, there was nothing behind me pulling me back.
No expectations.
No pressure. Just the road in front of me, and the quiet understanding that respect doesn't come from what you give. It comes from what you're willing to stop giving when it's no longer valued. The light turned green, and I kept driving. Not away from them, but forward as someone who finally knew her place. Not at the edge of the table, but at the center of her own.
Life.